Okay. Can Claudie, can you hear me? Yes. Hello, everyone, in the room and online. Thank you so much for joining us for the final week of the Department of what? Come in. Thank you for joining us for the final week of the Department of Non-Human Resources reading group. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are meeting today on the lands of the Bundjalung Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to the 13 tribes and clans that care for and maintain sovereignty over this land, water and sky. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Gadigal, Bidjigal and Barramadigal peoples from where Connie and I live and work. I'd also like to pay respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining us in the space tonight or online. So as I said, welcome to a very special final week of the Department of Non-Human Resources reading group. We usually start each week with a little kind of round of introductions and get people to share their names, and if they're on Zoom where they're joining us from, but mostly we're in the room tonight. But I'll start by handing over for an intro to our very special guest co-host this evening, Asphyxia. And I'll leave it to Asphyxia to introduce us.
Hello, yes, I'm Asphyxia. I'm the author of Future Girl, the book that we're going to be discussing this evening. I wrote this book, well, I started 9 years ago, and it took me 8 years to write. Also, I have done the art in the book, 384 pages of full colour artwork, which was a massive process for me to make all of that. And I also worked as an artist, which I've put online. And previously I worked as a circus performer and a puppeteer. I've had a very interesting life so far. So that's a summary of my background.
Thank you, Asphyxia. I guess because this reading group has been going for 9 weeks now, I just wanted to maybe mention the process that's gone on as we've moved through different readings by different authors, sometimes multiple authors collaborating. And just to say that the reading group sort of discussion has been led by the group that participates each week, and there's been a lot of enthusiasm from the beginning to be able to read an excerpt from Future Girl. So a big thank you for being here IRL. So the reading for the reading group tonight is coming out of a little temporary library that's part of this project. And people from the community, when they visit this gallery, are welcome to sit and spend time reading for themselves. But this book was originally suggested by a member of staff here, Claudie Frock, who's invisible behind the tech desk tonight. So thank you to Claudie. But it's really amazing to have Asphyxia here to talk about I guess, your experience of writing the book. But also tonight's reading group we called the Synchronic Bleaks, which is the name of a fictional band from Asphyxia's story that opens up Piper to deeper understandings of music. And that's something which I think you've expressed. I think you have a course online that is a music appreciation course of some kind that I've noticed?
Yes, one of the projects that I've been working on recently to work out how to make music accessible for deaf people. And I've worked out a specific process by which you can change any song to match with the specific person and their deafness. So one person who is deaf has told me that she asked a professional musician if they could please make music to match her, and the musician didn't know how to do that. So we worked out how to do that. So that's what my music course is about. So to teach deaf people how to do it themselves, so that they have the independence to create that music. And what I've been working on recently, in Future Girl, I touched on the fact that when you're deaf, it doesn't mean that you can't or don't enjoy music. Many deaf people do love music. But like Piper in the book, she has trouble to access it. So for Piper, it's very meaningful to be able to have her friends tell her about the songs and explain it and sign it to her and watch the lip patterns as the singer is singing. So that's how deaf people often access music. And I picked that name, Synchronic Bleaks, as like a contrast of what's actually happening in the book. So we have, on one hand, we have a very bleak future that I was writing about, but at the same time, we have that synchronic community to make a new and better future. So I wanted both of those things to come together in the band.
It's interesting that you are talking about the sort of, there's a dystopia and utopia envisaged in Future Girl, which is kind of a tension that I think exists throughout the book. And it's also something that we've been speaking about a lot in the reading group here over the previous 8 weeks, which is, you know, how does the world sort of survive, and how do we change ourselves in order to help the planet survive and us thrive within it. So just to give a bit of a summary of how we usually run these reading groups for those who haven't participated before, we like to read together a section of the book. And so we invite people to, and this is totally optional, to read aloud or sign a paragraph, and we sort of pass the baton around, as it were. But it's very, we find it really important, especially when a group of strangers come together, as a way to sort of voice and sign the text aloud, being quite important to understanding the shape of the words.
So if anybody would like to read a paragraph, let us know and we'll pass the speaker.
Or sign.
Or sorry, if you would like to sign as well, we can pass you a computer. Well, I can start. We dig around in the ground until we find some dirty knobs. Potatoes. Then Robbie points to the leafless tree with the orange fruit. She makes a small theatre of this one. Mine's cutting a fruit open, taking a bite, and discovering one is in heaven. They're pessamies, Marley adds. What did you say? Persimmons. I have to ask for 2 repeats because I've never heard of this fruit. Robbie touches Marley's elbow, makes a gesture that looks like her right hand climbing up her left arm, and points to Marley. Next, she holds up 3 fingers. Obediently, he scales the tree, effortlessly swinging into its branches and hanging by one hand as he plucks each piece of fruit. He drops them into my palm one by one, and when we have 3, I hand them to Robbie, who tucks them into her leather pocket, now fat with food.
She asks a question which I don't get. Marley nudges me, his fingers warm against my skin. What do you want to eat for dinner? Fish, chicken, or rabbit? I'm staying for dinner. My eyes widen. I thought we were picking all this food as a demonstration. I dared not think I'd get to taste it. Though suddenly I feel a little worried too, because the only vegetables I've really found recognizable have been the carrots. I like potato chips, but how those brown, knobbly stone things will turn into a plate of glistening gold strips is anybody's guess. I haven't seen a whole cabbage since I was a kid, and the fruit and herb are a total mystery to me. Or are you Thezadar? Marley asks. Am I what? Vegetarian. Oh, no, it's okay. I eat meat. Does anyone want to read? We're up to it. 84? Yeah, 85. Welcome to take this.
What are you up to? Oh, vegetarian.
Just after I eat meat.
I flounder. I mean, I eat meat flavored, reckon, but there's no actual meat involved, which certainly helped Organicor get lots of animal rights and climate change activists on board. So actually, I suddenly realized that I have kind of been vegetarian these last few years. Also, when Robbie said fish, chicken, or rabbit, surely she didn't mean, I think of the enormous white chickens in the pen we walked through and the soft furry bunnies in their hutches, their red eyes fixed on me. Are we going to kill one? Is that part of the demonstration? Fish, I say hastily, figuring that will have to be reckoned since there are no fish left in the ocean. But Marley and Robbie lead me to the pond beneath the arbor, and when I kneel down and peer into the dark water, I discover fish flickering through its murky depths. Marley and Robbie disappear, returning with a fishing net and a large rubber hammer. I eye the hammer in alarm, and Marley, seeing my wariness, points to himself, turns one hand into a wriggling fish and brings the other hand down on it with a death blow. So he will do the killing, which doesn't really settle my alarm at all. I point to myself and bury my face briefly in my hands. Robbie laughs, gives me the thumbs up, and we're all agreed. Marley will kill, I won't be watching.
Yeah, I'll read quickly. Yep. Robbie puts the net into my hands and I scoop up 2 silver fish the size of my forearm, which are flipping around wildly. Marley reaches into the net, grabs one and tosses it back. I hand him the net and my hunger turns to queasiness and then outright nausea as I turn my back. I don't hide my face in my hands though. I stare upwards at the trees, at the sky, at the abundance of nature and plants before me. I see a spider and some insects I can't identify. Then it's over, and we're traipsing back to the inside-out kitchen with a dead fish and a leather apron full of vegetables. Robbie sets me in front of a basin of water with a stiff bristled brush, and my job is to scrub the vegetables clean. I scrub and scrub, paranoid at the thought of eating dirt and dying from it, until eventually Robbie gets impatient and grabs the potatoes from me, slicing them up with a knife at remarkable speed. Marley disappeared. There's a short square stack of blackened bricks, hollow in the middle, sitting atop a concrete bench. Robbie pokes twigs into an opening at the bottom and sets them on fire. When she places a large pan on top over the hollow part, I understand that this is a stove. Suddenly, I'm very interested indeed. There are some unused bricks behind the guest house at home. Could I build such a thing? There's no mortar holding these bricks together. When one of the bricks gets nudged out of place, Robbie just pokes it back with a stick. But where would I find twigs to burn? There are those bushes along the river. Yeah, it's big now.
I think the 60 is going to save her energy. You can hold on to that.
All right, that's fine.
No, please. Do you want to?
If my voice sounds funny, I'm just okay.
You can print.
Put my glasses on. Okay. All that there. Yeah.
You stop whenever you want.
Okay. I didn't have that right. I can't pronounce that one. Okay. Just that line there, I can't pronounce it.
I surreptitiously.
Okay. Take a photo with your wristlet and Robbie springs me. I brush with embarrassment, but he doesn't seem to mind. He disappears into the house and returns with a scrap of paper. Am I okay? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, paper. She starts writing on it, at which point I realize with a shot that she's not wearing a wristlet, so has nothing to type into. It's called a rocket stove. Even level design channels the heat effortlessly, so uses very little fuel. Most people don't know about these, but they're easy to build. I point to myself and mine building bricks to in a similar pile to tell her I will make one. She grins, gives me the thumbs up and points to the opening at the bottom where the twigs go in, which is above the first layer of bricks. There's a thin strip of wired mesh I hadn't noticed before, floated horizontally between the bottom two bricks. The burning twigs rest on the top of this metal. Very important, the wood sits on top and oxygen flows underneath. Well, that's a bit of a letdown because I had no idea where to get a bit of metal like this. Robbie starts cooking with veggies, fish, and sizzling butter and herbs, and I follow her instructions, all given through mine. Stir, add twigs to the fire. Ease them slowly so they won't make too much smoke. it's impressive how she can make herself so clear without a sound, with a mix of mind.
I think that's the end of that little excerpt. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, definitely.
So I'll stop sharing actually. So that's the first little section of 2 that we wanted to read together. Maybe I'll throw to Asphyxia to, I guess, bring out some of the ideas and the thinking in that section.
Part of my goal with the book, which you can really see in that section that we've just read, is that I wanted to show that it's possible to still live well, even with possibly environmental disaster. So Robbie, she shows Piper a way to grow your own food, to produce and cook it yourself from scratch. And I really lived like that before. And I have done all of the things. That's the way I have lived, and it's based on reality. I know that it's a true vision and that people can follow that vision. If coronavirus really made havoc on our society and we weren't able to buy food, we can grow it in order to survive. We can produce it like that. I wanted to show a way to do that in a positive light, send a positive message of hope. Later in the book, Piper learns how to do that. She takes one step further, because it's not just following Robbie and her way. She does it personally, because Robbie does it personally for herself and her family, but Robbie teaches and does it for the whole community and gets the community together. And that's part of the message of hope that I wanted to provide in the text, in the book. Did you have any thoughts about that? How that impacted you when you read the book in that section?
I was thinking about how difficult it is to light a fire and to learn to cook on a fire. Yeah. And I liked how you described the disconnect between a potato and something that you'd eat. A potato from the ground and a chip. So many people are used to going to a supermarket and buying things in containers and plastic, and they don't know where it comes from.
Yes, in the book, I wanted to highlight the idea that our generation can think that food comes in boxes. And in the future, it definitely will come in boxes. It's not that unbelievable. I didn't exaggerate that too much. It's about, I wanted people to connect with the earth, and it's a really more meaningful and more nutritious and more satisfying and enjoyable way to eat. Yeah, I was thinking about how a lot of young people that live in the city, urban environments, haven't ever had the opportunity to go camping. So they don't have the basic skills to, to light a fire, to cook on a fire, spending time in nature. There is a big, I guess, need to bring that into people's lives. And it's interesting that you brought those, cooking, camping skills into an urban environment for survival, I guess. Yeah. Yes. I think that as society, we have become quite disconnected from the earth And when we're very disconnected from the earth, it's hard to care a lot about it. It's hard to think about how we'll stop climate change and environmental disaster when we're so disconnected from it. I think that it's really important to have a connection. And interestingly, I grew up as a city girl. I didn't really go camping. I didn't like to be outside. I was very disconnected from nature. And when I found that connection with nature, it was amazing. It felt really meaningful to me. And I think up until that time, I had a type of emptiness inside of me. I was looking for something and I couldn't quite find it. But when I did, and I started to grow my own food, I felt a sense of calm, like a grounding, like life was a little bit more meaningful in some way. And that nature has, I think that nature has that effect on us.
How did you find that connection to nature?
Well, interesting. First, I went on a road trip with a friend of mine, and he brought me to northern New South Wales. I grew up in Melbourne, and I had never seen the hippie handmade houses. I'd never seen that before, and I was taken by them. And I stayed in a little hut that had an outside kitchen, a big vegetable garden, a fire bath in the garden. And I was like, wow, people really live like this? I loved it. And I asked the man there, I said, this hut, did you build it? He said, yes. And I was very intrigued. I thought maybe I could build one. And I became so excited about it. And I came home and I built a house, a small house. But that process of building forced me outside into nature, in the wind, in the rain, in the mud, in the sun, in all of the elements. And that really impacted me and gave me a connection. And after that, it was very different. And I was growing my own, and I learned how to grow my own food as well.
Talking about food, you remind me of we had trees cut down, and we had trees, we had tree cut down, and my kids, and it was winter, and it was cold, Melbourne, and we got some trees from the branches from trees, and we put them in the fire. And we then later we had potatoes, idea for potatoes in the fire, and we put it in the fire, and we all had fun. We had fun. It was really lovely. I think of that idea. Well, they used to have a cooking like you did in the past. It's lovely. Yeah, I enjoyed the book.
It's funny that that memory has stayed with you as a kind of warm and nice memory. We treasure those types of memories more than we treasure cooking in the kitchen. But why is that? There's something about that connection with nature.
Interesting that that sort of experience is so meaningful and connecting for so many people, and yet most of us, certainly in urban environments, still live in this very disconnected way. And I found in Future Girl, I found that, you know, it was quite a conceivable near future. You know, it didn't feel that far removed from the current situation, and yet there were these particular elements that were so awful and so sad, like that there were no trees, you know, that all the trees had been cut down and sort of vandalized because timber was so valuable. Just, you know, it was definitely quite a compelling, I guess, vision of, you know, even if things just got a bit worse, it could be, you know, we're so close to that level of like absolute disconnection, and sometimes we don't quite realize, I think, how close we are to that edge.
Yes, that's part of why I wrote the book, because I do feel that we are a little bit naive about it all, especially that key topic in the book of peak oil. Many people don't know what that is. Does anyone here know what that is? So just briefly, peak oil is a point where oil becomes, there's more demand for oil than supply. So when that happens, oil becomes extremely expensive, and then petrol becomes expensive, and then we can't transport food, so food becomes expensive, and there's a roll-on effect of that. This time in our society, when we have plenty of resources, it's the golden age, really. That's what it's called, because we have plenty of resources, and humans waste a lot usually in the golden age. But if you look at past society, for example, on Easter Island, they have fantastic civilization there. But after the golden age, the resources started to deplete, and then there became tension, and then everything got destroyed. They were cutting down they cut down their last tree, and that was the end of civilization. That last tree ruined everything because there was nothing to hold on to the soil, or the soil washed away. They couldn't grow anything there, and everything died, and that was the end. And I took that on as a warning to not cut down the last tree. And I want to put that into the book as a warning, because we are heading in that direction, and we need to put the handbrake on now and save our resources and use less. I think it's very, very interesting because the last few generations have focused on productivity, on process. And what that means is more technology and more roads, more machines, more buildings, everything that's related to what they deem as progress. But people have shifted a little bit in the way they think, and they think that that is now old-fashioned. And progress is now meaning to look after the environment, to plant trees and plants, to do that more, to look after the animals, to look after people. That is now deemed progress. So it feels like the definition has changed a little bit in the last, or quite a lot in the last few years. But it is quite sad that it happened as it has. But sometimes I feel like I have hope, and that people are starting to connect with the old-fashioned way, you know, previous to that more recent definition of progress. They've realized what's going on isn't right, and I feel like that yeah, some days are positive and some not so hopeful, but there is positives and negatives. I want to add to that, I really agree with you about how our society has focused on progress, but it's not always the best journey. You're right, it's become old-fashioned now. And in the book, Piper, her mum, she's very focused on that mentality of progress. And she's always getting Piper to, you know, you need to get a good job and need to earn good wage, you need to become a researcher or scientist. But Piper is not interested. She doesn't want that life. And in the end, she lets go of that idea of success. And her success is defined by growing food and growing community and fixing up or building bikes. In the mum's eyes, that's not sophisticated, it's not achieving enough, it's not successful, but the mum does start to see that the world isn't going well, and she starts to value that not progress and not what it meant, because it means that we will potentially lose the earth. Because really, if we lose the earth, science doesn't matter. What we need is to eat and to have connection with others. That's right. You know that slogan or that saying about gardens? The gardening is a new revolution. I agree.
The way things are going, and that's why I saw that book and I really like gardens. And now I think people have to realise that they have to be more prepared for the future because things are changing. We are going backwards now. I can see it. Everybody can see it. They had time to think while we was in a lockup. And I believe even people with have a bit of grass growing, they should grow something, garden herb, which I love, and everywhere. They have a community gardens up there, but they rent it and give it to the homeless for meals. But we should maybe, we haven't got a garden, we should rent one ourselves and do more. We need to prepare ourselves a bit more because we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, so you've got a true thing there. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I have believed that there's a possibility of a collapse of civilization. I've believed that for a while. So I liked to learn skills to learn in preparation of that. So for many years, I've focused on learning how to get all of those skills to grow my own food, to make clothing, I've made my own shoes. I've got another adventure of mine has been to make my own clothes from a rabbit. So I got a rabbit with very long fur, which I would trim and spin and knit into clothing. And it's wonderful. And I've made lots and lots of really warm, beautiful clothing from that fur. And I really felt like I needed to focus on learning all of those skills because who has those skills now? In society, there's not that many people who still hold those skills from the past. A lot of those people are passing away and quickly. So it's hard to access those skills now.
I do remember there was a woman here in the galley when I was volunteer, and she had this idea for clothes. Right now I can't remember how she did it, but I remember all the greens and that, and she made up this material which I'm not sure. It's like felt, F-E-L-T, and I really liked it, you know, way back in 2000, yeah. I still remember that. Yeah, I remember that. Thank you.
So alongside this journey of discovery in the book about, you know, growing food and about, I guess, different ways of living, there's also this journey that that Piper goes through of learning about her own identity as a deaf person and sort of meeting her community for the first time. We have some reading from that sort of part of the book, and I might defer to Claudie about our timing, whether we can push it and have a few more minutes to read a couple more pages together. I know we're getting close to 6 o'clock. Is that okay? I'm going to go for it. Okay, great. Thanks, Claudie. Well, I'll bring the pages up onto the Zoom. Excuse me, going through the pages. Okay, so we have a section which I realized, and I apologize that we have defaced your art by highlighting with this terrible highlighter tool. Thank you. We're on 236. And the last paragraph, we're starting on the last paragraph of 236. I'll start and hand it around. Robbie pulls herself up tall and signs slightly sarcastically, overly slow and clear, which makes it easy for me to understand. Do you really think that you're the first person ever to suggest this to me? That now you have had this brilliant idea, I will go home and book in the surgery? I was thinking that you should get your wristlet implanted. Marley interprets for her. The guy looks down at his wristlet, clearly considering the idea. He answers her seriously, oblivious to her sarcasm. I wonder if Marley got that through in his voice when he interpreted Robbie's words. I don't want my wristlet implanted. Marley signs for him. My mate got his done and it became badly infected. Very painful. Robbie throws up her hands and slams the side of one hand down on the palm of the other. I glance at Marley and lip read him easily this time. Precisely, he says, his face sharp and pointed.
The guy frowns, confused. Marley changes the subject by asking how he can help, serves the customer and returns to me. He's in a mood, handling the bike parts roughly, clenching the tools too tight. Cam and Kelsey talk for a while longer, then make to leave. When Kelsey leans down to kiss Marley goodbye, he turns his face slightly so that she kisses his cheek, not his lips. If she notices, Kelsey doesn't give any indication. She squeezes my wrist and says something about the poster, but Marley doesn't interpret. I give her the thumbs up and indicate that I'll message her when it's done. Late afternoon, a guy comes through the door who Marley greets warmly in sign language. He's maybe 30-something, has shaved off all his hair and wears loose, dirty jeans and a tight green t-shirt revealing large muscles. This is Justin, Marley says to me. He's deaf. To Justin, he spells my name, shows my new name sign, and then says, Piper is deaf too.
I feel a bit weird about that. I never ever tell anyone I'm deaf. Obviously, they figured it out anyway, most of the time. But the longer I postpone that moment, the more they get used to talking to me normally. Otherwise, most people immediately overdo the way I speak to them. And I hate it. But Justin's face lit up, lights up, and he turned to me in delight. Pippa, I haven't met you before. Where did you grow up? Here in Melbourne, I signed back. He phoned, confused. Which school? Mary Magdalene, I think it's spelled. I didn't know there was a deaf here. I shake my head. Just me. He hooked his fingers and circled them in the front of his mouth, and I thought it was a sign for lip reading. But Justin is mouthing something else. Either Marley finger spelt. His bad mood seems to have evaporated. I find confused. If I grow up idle, Marley explains, it means you didn't sign. You have to lip read. Oh yes, that's me. Justin gave me a sympathetic smile, but he was learning to sign now. I nodded. Marley teaching me, please son, Justin, and he gives Marley a high five. If I ever want to meet other deaf people, just message me. I'll take you to the deaf club. I grew up to be able to, so I know what's it like. We swapped contact through. I admit I can't really picture myself going out with a guy in his 30s. How do I know I can trust him? Is he trying to pick me up? After Justin had inquired about buying a bike, had told there's a long waiting list. He and Marley hugged and he leaves. You seem to move very fast, saying to Marley, inviting me out, wanting to know about my background. No, Marley's surprised I'm not like that. He's gay. That's normal in the deaf community. If you meet another deaf person, you always ask for their life story, starting with where they grew up and what school they went to. He's just concerned about you. You're so isolated because you're grown up oval. Isolated, I copy his time. A finger moving in a small upright circle. It's not as if I haven't been around people. Isolated from people who sign. You talk as if you've been denied my birthright. As it's being deaf is such an important part of my identity that I need to spend time with other deaf people. I thought that deafness was meant to be like having freckles, something that fades into the background, so you really don't really notice it after a bit. Do people with freckles really seek to spend time with other freckled people? Doesn't matter, I asked. That's for you to tell me, but I have thought it's the kind of hard for me. You know, making friends, understanding what's going on, trying to fit in a world you can't hear with other deaf people. You have had a shared experience and shared language you can all access easily. If I am honest, this is exactly the reason why I've been involved in Northcote High. It's always so a part of what thrills me about spending time in rugby, not being the other one, obviously, to what's happening around me or confused about it. Knowing there's no chance he'll try to speak to me, that if he wants to communicate, it will happen vitally, not being the only one with limited career opportunities and getting to share the frustration of that with her.
So I guess we wanted, in the last few minutes we have together, to, I guess, understand or talk as a group about this transformative moment, because I think it's a really important moment in the book, but it's also a really important moment that I think all of us need to go through at some point to arrive at, like, you know, when we know that we need to change society and do things differently. What is this moment of transformation? What is that moment that that's going to create that change in us?
I think an important thing that I was trying to describe and show in that paragraph, it's connected with how society needs to change and the perspective of a deaf person as them being lesser or defective. But really, for Piper, she has deaf gain And by that, I mean there are benefits of being deaf. The way that her life is rich and better because of her deafness. One example is in the deaf community, you do have instant friendships. Piper didn't realize that she was following the hearing way and assuming that that man was inviting her out meant that he wanted to pick her up or engage with her sexually or something. She's like, I can't trust him. But in the deaf community, it's different. You don't ever assume that if an old man invites you out, that doesn't mean that he's wanting to have sex with you. It means that he wants to be friends with another deaf person. And also there's mixed generations in the deaf community. It's easier to become friends with people who are of a generation above or below. Everyone mixes together and has the same opportunities. Very, very different to the hearing world where they're very segregated by generation or age. You're instantly welcomed, and that man cares about her feelings of isolation and wants to welcome her into that space where she won't be isolated, where she will be understood and supported. Really, it's beautiful. And that is what the deaf community is like. And when I was invited into the deaf community, I was astonished and excited, and I felt really lucky to be a part of that. If I woke up hearing all of a sudden and I can't belong to the deaf community, I would feel grief about it. So that was important transition, and I wanted Piper to have that experience. I wanted to show people who are reading the book about the deaf community and that it's really different from the hearing community. Yeah.
Also, the shade that Robbie throws. I don't know if that can be when the way that she's so deadpan about and like just deadly confident in her place in the world and her role in community, and just like the nerve of people coming up to her and assuming that she wants this hearing implant and that she's never thought about it, and just the way she delivers it back to the person who's walked into the shop, I just was so great. You just like, you're silently like cheering.
Thank you. I think that it's really important thing for Piper to see, and that's why it's important for deaf youth to also to have deaf role models, because Piper had never seen another deaf person operate in the world and function in the world. So when that person comes and says, oh, you should get a cochlear, and you're like, oh no, but Robbie shows a different way. She shows the man that it's not appropriate for him to suggest a cochlear. She puts it back and shows, well, you know, by saying, well, you should have that surgery, that implanted yourself. And then by showing that way, Piper takes that on and thinks about it later in the book and thought, maybe I could be more like Robbie. But I missed that in my own upbringing. I didn't socialize with deaf people, and I needed those role models for me to grow. And later I found Stella Young. She wasn't deaf herself. She had a disability and she was in a wheelchair, and she showed me to be more assertive and a more confident way. And I really took that on from her, and I needed that.
I feel like we could quite happily keep talking for a lot longer about a lot of things. But I'm aware that time is against us, so we'll probably have to wrap up this part of things. I reckon if people want to continue this off-site, maybe we can. But thank you so much, Asphyxia, for joining us. It's been such a wonderful last reading group session, and thank you all, everyone who's in the room and on Zoom for joining us and being part of this conversation. Oh yeah, just like to let everyone know, particularly those in the room, that there are copies of Future Girl available that you can purchase from Asphyxia tonight, and she'll sign your copy for you. So if you haven't read it, buy it. So I think that's it from us for now. And
Oh, yes. I just want to say thank you so much for having me, and thank you for reading my book. It means a lot to me when people read it and pass it on to other people, because everyone who reads that becomes more aware about deafness and more inspired, hopefully, about the environment and food growing and all of that. It's an opportunity to really impact and change our world. So thank you so much for helping me with that endeavour.
we'll sign off on the Zoom. Thanks everyone, and see you next time.